I guess when you're asked to come and present at a conference like this, the first thing you do is you hope that one of the speakers will fluff the lines, as John pointed out earlier. You don't expect to have to go directly after your boss's boss, who's identified a number of issues that the HSC, the organisation you work for, has around data and information, and you're going to stand up and present all those back out to him and to you. But here we are. Before I begin, I convey apologies from Richard. Richard Corbridge is the Chief Information Officer of the HSC. It was his intention to be here today, but I won't say he had a prior engagement. He probably had 12 or 13 prior engagements that elevated me to the limelight today. So when we get started, I just want to give you a flavour of real-world data and information around what we do in the HSC and the information that underpins what you guys do in a research capacity, what Mirish and the department are trying to do in a policy capacity. And I prescribe to the KISS process, ideology, keep it simple, stupid, me being the stupid one. I think we use data every day in everything we do. I think when we're going to the shops, we decide, is it raining? Will I park close to the door? Will I leave the kids in the car? I'm just running for milk. I only need to get a few things, so I won't get a trolley. And all those little bits, all those little data points go to form our decision-making process and ultimately our policies. Again, with my boss's boss sitting here, I'm not sure whether it's the right idea to say that our process, our roadmap for data governance and data and information is really underpinned by things like the movies and what Hollywood has to offer. So I guess to start with, we, as Mirish has pointed out, we do struggle with some of our data and information, so we do really have to start from somewhere and go where nobody's really gone before. Next one's probably a little bit more poignant. We've got to really sort of seize today. Today's the day where we have to start collecting this information. And as I go through, I'm going to point out different touch points we have and different data items that we have and where we really need to change from data and information from just counting what we always counted to actually counting something meaningful that you guys can use to help inform us. It's going to be a bumpy ride for all of us. It really is. We're going to have to make significant changes in the organisation. We're going to have to make significant changes in our policy, in our relationships with the providers, with the hospitals, with community healthcare organisations, with the department and how we do it. We need to consider, can we all handle the truth? And I think coming from my performance management days, and I was just saying to a couple of people in the audience earlier, I sat for a couple of years with chief executives and chief officers from community healthcare organisations with a theme of performance, be it good performance or poor performance, and they'd argue with me that I'm saying the number was 54 and they're saying the number was 52. The hour would be up, they'd get out scot-free, and I'd be sitting there with a whole lot of actions not filled in, a whole lot of performance management issues not resolved. So we really have to learn to find a single version of the truth and a single source of truth so we can do that. And I guess when we get to the end, what we need to do is we need to look at what we have today. We need to deliver a bimodal type, and I don't come from any IT background or statistical background, so a few buzzwords for me in IT is as far as it goes. But we really need to look at what we do today. We need to continue with business as usual. We need to make sure the business as usual carries on and go with the innovative processes on some of the data analytics, some of the policy ideas that the other people were speaking about, and really get to the final movie. And when that bimodal approach happens and we link today's business with tomorrow's innovation, we'll have a real affinity moment. I guess the next thing I want to go before we get into the healthcare aspect of data, I give you an example rather than the jokey movies, and Mirish, it really was a joke. We're not going to use the movies to describe our new strategy. I need to go back. I'll give you an example from my past that really shows you how we all use data in everything we do every day, whether it's making a decision or forming policy. And I suppose for me, a lifetime ago now, almost 20 years ago, I was a full-time athlete. I would rock up to races and I'd consider what I had to do before the race, consider the day before, a few days before, and I'd look at a number of things that would really inform what I did and how I approached a race. The first thing I do, and the little bubbles were supposed to drop in at certain points when I clicked it, but they didn't, so we'll work it out. So the first thing I did when I had a race, whether it be big or small, and I ran a good few races down here in Dangan, or up here in Dangan, so I would have been around the tracks a bit, but I'd look at the type of track that we had, and I think about, right, it's a Mondo track, or it's just a regular tartan track. What sort of spikes will I put in my shoes? Is it a big race? Is it a final? Is it a championship race? Will I have really sharp spikes in my shoes? Well, those sorts of things all impacted on what I would do just to my shoes, just to try and give me a couple of hundredths of a second advantage. When we're talking about healthcare, we want to treat an extra patient or get somebody's granny an extra couple of home help hours, and these little points all add to that. I'd then look at the time that I was running. I'd know when I was going to eat, what I was going to eat. If it was a big race, for me, laid on the line, I was a 400-meter runner towards the end of my career. I probably got sick after every 400-meter race. I probably got sick before most of them. So what I chose to eat was dependent on what the race was, when the race was, if I had heats, if I had finals. So while I didn't realize when I was running and when I was an athlete that I was using all this information and all this data every day of the week to inform my decisions, it was going in and it was having an effect. A couple of the other touch points, we won't go through them all, but I'd consider the wind. If the wind was up the back straight, for me being small and having to race like 6'4" guys that built like this, and skinny little white guy having to race these people, I'd always hope that the wind was up the back straight, because I'd be dead at the home straight anyway. So these all had an impact on the way you approached every race, even the way the track was laid out, where you'd put the blocks. I always went, and again from getting sick, I always went and made sure that I knew where I could go and hide or find a bathroom, that I'd finish my race and get off the track as quick as I could, so that I wasn't out in all my glory there. But these little touchstones, while they're personal to me, we all use these decisions every day of the week to inform what we do. We do it in health. There's people that I've worked with in hospitals here. They make decisions every day of the week based on what you call tacit knowledge. But they make them for a purpose, and they make them really for the patient. And they don't realize that it's data and information that they're using, because it's just part of their everyday work. So I guess for me, while I say that I'm not an IT specialist by profession, I guess maybe I fell into data and analytics much earlier than my career allowed. What I want to talk to you about in relation to HSC data really can be defined into two aspects. The operational data. So that's the data the lads and ladies use in the hospital on a daily basis to deliver at point of care. They'd be using medical notes, they'd be using demography, they'd be using EHRs when we deliver the EHR, although we have radiographers here in the audience as well that do have an electronic patient record. So that information is at its most granular level. I don't see that. Mirish doesn't see that. Those beeps that he gets on the phone, or he got on the phone, I'll talk to him later, but there's a delete button that we can get rid of those and not look at. But we don't use that granular detail to inform policy, and perhaps we should. Perhaps we should know that Mrs. Jones or Mrs. Murphy was waiting 7 weeks or 9 weeks for her treatment, rather than knowing that we have, I don't know what the number is today, something like 460,000 people waiting on a waiting list, and we have ED performance at 6-hour ED performance at 60% in the organisation, and I'm sweating under the collar while Mirish is looking at these statistics, writing them down. What I'm talking about really is about the aggregated management data. It's anonymised data that we use to collate our performance. We use it to work out where we're going to put our resources, and it helps inform some of our management decisions and our management policy decisions, and some of the long-term policies that we would have. The big issue that we have about data, we use data both as a carrot and a stick in the HSC, so we use it we collect the data and we say, you tell us how good you are or how bad you're not, and we'll give you more resources, we'll give you an extra few million euro, we'll give you an extra few WTs, and then when you give us the data, we'll say, well, you're a really bad boy or a really bad girl this week, and why didn't you do this, and why didn't you treat those patients? We're going to these next two slides are going to fly through pretty quickly, so I have them written down and I'll be able to read them to you. I guess when Mirish talks about the ED performance, and he knows exactly in the CELTA group how many people are waiting for admission, how many people are waiting greater than 6 hours, how many people are waiting greater than 9 hours, and they're poor performing statistics by and large for most of our 49 hospitals or the 24 EDs that collect them. But the HSC does a huge amount of work in delivering service to patients. And in all that work that we do, we collect data on every single one of them. So we have, do you know what, I just let it run and I'll read them out to you. The next one will flip over. So we have 19,000 today, or it's actually not today, this was prepared for me beforehand, but we have on an average day in the HSE 19,040 hospital attendances. That's not ED attendances now, that's people that go into the hospital for a scheduled appointment. We've 4,110 outpatient procedures, so they would be inpatient procedures, so they're your normal surgeries, so you have a hip operation or a tonsillectomy or your eyes done or veins or whatever it is. We have 9,040 outpatient appointments, so every day that the hospitals are open, we have 9,040 people, part of our population, that walk into the hospital to see a team of nurses, junior doctors and consultants to find out what's wrong with them. That will then feed back into the inpatient procedures and episodes. We have 2,602 day case procedures. Those 2,602 day case procedures would include things like dermatology laser treatments. It includes some of radiotherapy. It might include outpatient radiology appointments. We have, on any given day, Mauritius statistic, we have 3,288 people that will attend an ED. So they will either come in from a rather traumatic event, a road traffic accident, or they'll walk in off the street or a referral from the GP. So again, we have 49 hospitals in our organization. This is public hospitals now. We have 24 of those that provide a full ED service. And we can say today 3,288 people will walk in there. 832 people will call an ambulance. So those 832 people, if the patients decide to get into the ambulance and they have the right to refuse, will be brought to hospital and we'll have to deal with those as well. We'll deliver a staggering 230,137 lab tests. So that's a blood test, a PSA, to tell you that your histology, you have a virus, whatever the case may be. We even have time to deliver 180 babies today. So it'll add to the population growth. It'll try and reduce that exponential curve because we will have 180 new young'uns. The HSC, through its partners with the GPs, will deliver 158,907 prescriptions. That's an awful lot of Panadol and Augmentin, but that's what we'll do. Cancer patients will have, on average, 2,054 screening tests. We deliver to people with disabilities to allow them live in the community on their own, 11,233 disability PA hours. We'll have 28,493 home help hours, so for all the older people that are living on their own, that could include anything from helping clean the house, prepare the meals, or a companion for 45 to 50 minutes every day, just so that they're not in the house on their own. We will also have 2,687 GP out-of-hours appointments, so anyone that doesn't get to their GP by 6 o'clock tonight will ring up West Dock. West Dock will take a portion of that, 2,500. There'll be 48 urgent breast cancer patient appointments today. And out of all of that service that we'll deliver today, we'll have 25 complaints. So while we have a lot of data, we have a lot of information, and some of it's exponentially going in the wrong direction, we're doing a lot of good work. And I wrote down in my notes, maybe I should be ringing 6-1 and getting a slot on the news to say how great I am and how great the HSC is. But all of these numbers, and I know I went through them a little bit, took a little bit of time going through them, but all of these numbers all relate to an individual patient. They all relate to what we need to do to improve patient care and the outcomes of those patients. Okay. I've prepared a little slide, a little video that we'll play. There's no sound in it. You'll be able to read some of it. It does play a rather dodgy song. Richard, the CIO, is not too happy. He's big into the music. He probably would have had raving lights and buzzing music before he came on stage here. But this was prepared for another presentation, and I just stole it and put it in here. It really gives you an idea of all that patient activity that we do and what happens to the data and what happens to it before it gets to the likes of John and Murish and how it can be used. What I want you to think about when you're looking at this video is it's really only about performance activity data. So I'm not talking about HR data. I'm not talking about finance data. I'm talking about the data that relates to the frontline care of patients. To get this data in on a monthly basis, there's 700 metrics. So 700 metrics breaks down to, I don't even know how many KPIs. We produce 20 reports from this data on a monthly basis. It's about 458,000 lines of data from acute hospitals and community healthcare. So it's a massive volume of data. And as Murish was saying, and other people have said, maybe we don't collect the right things at the right time, but it'll just give you an idea of I could sing you a song if you want to hear something while it's playing. And Brendan, I'm more than happy to share the slides, but the video as well.
Great.
Actually, not quite as impressive when there's no music to it. So just to put in context, and sorry about the music, just to put in context of that's 458,000 lines of data that we receive every month, we receive from frontline care staff. We ask, or I ask, or somebody asks the frontline care staff to tell us how many patients were in ED. We ask them to tell us how many patients had radiation therapy, how long they were waiting, why they were waiting. We ask them to tell us how many outpatient appointments, and so on and so forth. So while we're asking them to do that in a manual fashion, and by and large, they go through diaries. Some of them have the luxury of having a computer automated system. They go through diaries and they count up how many patients went to physio, how many patients went to OT. They'll give that to me. And then their manager will go and ask them, how many did we do this week? And then the chief officer will go and ask them, how many did we do this week? So this is all done at a manual basis. So we have frontline staff doing it. We have data collectors doing it, managers doing it. We have ICT enablers, people that work in ICT trying to make this life easier for people. And we need to make sense of this information every day. Currently what we do is, and it probably is the bane of the department's life, we tell them how many we did and how long, or how many we didn't do and why we didn't do them. But it really doesn't add to the outcomes of patients. It really doesn't add to the overall improvement of health for the population. So the data journey that we have is for any aspect of the data that we collect in the HSC, and if you imagine the multitudes of those 400,000, we have an episode of care, by and large, last month, so we're in November now. So by and large, last month, if any of you went to a doctor or GP or the hospital, they'll have recorded your episode of care, they'll have recorded what you did and a whole load of different things about you, and they'll send up to me or to the team that work with me. They'll send up that person or a number of people went for a particular procedure. On the 15th of November, so in 5 days' time, we will ask each of the hospitals, each of the community healthcare organizations to return either electronically or via email with templates that they have to fill in by hand, all of that information. By the 20th, 21st of the month, we have to have developed the preliminary information, so we have to have cubed it, regurgitated it, turned it inside out, and made it look somewhat readable. It goes to the department, it goes to different people around the health landscape and the leadership of the HSC. By the 25th of the month, we'll call in all those chief executives of the hospitals, we'll call in the national directors, we'll call in the chief officers, and we'll say to them what they did well, what they didn't do well, ask them what their improvement plans are going to be. We're going to get a sense from them what they need to enable them to do and deliver the care that they need to do. And just in recent times, we've started producing the data report bi-monthly. Now, John was talking about information that's available and accessible to the public. That information is available and accessible to you on the HSC website. If you just look for corporate reports, it'll all come up. There is other links there that'll tell you what the metadata is around all those sorts of things. But we do produce a data document every month that gives you all of the hospitals benchmarked against one another, all of the community healthcare organizations benchmarked against one another on the performance, on the numbers they did, on the activity they did. That's available now, and we've taken a leaf out of the government's book and we've gone to open source. So right now it's available in again, the technical words, the CSV file. It's machine readable, I assume, but somebody does that for us. But that's available for any of you at any time if you want it. If you're looking to engage with us, we can share that information. But all of this and all of what I'm describing here is all manual. It's all done by people. I spent 1.5 years doing performance reporting and taking the information out of an Excel sheet, cutting and pasting it, and typing it into something that the HSC and the DOH, the department, could read and use. It's a hugely resource and labor-intensive process that we need to improve so that we can all go back to giving frontline service and care to the patients. So this is the bit that Mirish is waiting for. Data and the organization. We're on a journey. We've started the journey. I was appointed, Richard will say 1 year ago. I'm not sure whether it's quite 1 year ago, but I was appointed 1 year ago to head up his information services department. Currently, we have multiple sources of truth. We have multiple sources of where information's kept. We keep it in places like HYPE, that's hospital inpatient, whatever it is, HPO, the health pricing office. We have it in finance HR. We have it in the business information units up in Dublin. So we have all this. They're all collecting similar pieces of information. So we are moving towards, with the new changes in the HSC, the new leadership changes of the HSC, and the leadership changes in the Office of the Chief Information Office, we're moving to a single source of truth, and that started with the appointment of me into information services. We're moving to a single version of the truth. We've gained a lot of traction over the last number of years with our performance reporting and our performance and accountability framework. That's allowed us to, if we say the number is X, the number is actually X. Even if the number of X is wrong, it really doesn't matter. It's the theme of what the number represents. And we've now started to gain traction, and leadership have accepted it, and national directors and hospitals have started to accept that the presentation of the information doesn't have to be exact, but the idea of what it's representing really needs to be founded on good information. We need to move away from what I call performance monitoring, how many and how long, how many patients you do, how long did it take, to business analytics. We need to do that and underpin the e-health strategy within the Office of the CIO. We need to look at things like deprivation. We need to look at things like demography and stuff like that, so we can really see how this impacts on our health service. Richard has ring-fenced money for information services this year. We have started with the data governance program of work. the data governance program of works really is trying to put some manners on and standards around what we collect and how we collect it. It really is looking at the way people collect the information, and if somebody's collecting it on an iPad and somebody's collecting it in a diary or the back end of an envelope, we'll give them the enablers and the infrastructure to allow them to do that, to do it in an automated fashion. We have the monumental task of trying to deliver a platform of information to frontline service providers, to hospital executives and community healthcare executives. And that in itself, we've got 7 hospital groups in the HSC, 49 hospitals, 7 hospital groups, 9 community healthcare organizations. We've 1,200 plus clinicians or consultants, not to mention the tens of thousands of nurses that all rely on the data and information, but they don't actually get it. You saw in the video, the physio department don't actually even know what happened to the data when it went up. So we need to deliver them some sort of platform to enable them to see the information. That in itself, and I go back to my clinical days, getting 2 consultants to agree what time lunch is at and how many patients we're going to do before lunch and how many patients we're going to do after lunch is difficult. Imagine trying to get all those people to agree what the web platform is going to display, and that's before we even get down to what colors it's going to be in and what Googles or Chromes we're going to use. 3 minutes. I'm done anyway. We need to we need to embark with our colleagues. We need to embark with industry. We need to embark with tertiary institutions to really collect and measure what's important and what's worthwhile. We need to look at those 700 metrics, and you know what? We need to dump half of them, because half of them don't have any meaning to us, don't have any meaning to the department, and really don't have any meaning to patients. And the final thing that we need to deliver, well, I've already sort of said it, is we need to deliver the infrastructure for the people. We've done a load of things to date. They're there. Just give you a couple of real-world examples of clinical applications that provide real-time data that can be used in forming policy. I'll just go through one of them. I'll give you the Early Sense. So Early Sense is basically like it's like a baby monitor. It sits under the patient's mattress, and it records many of the vital signs like respiratory metrics, blood pressure and stuff like that. What that does for nurses and doctors and frontline caregivers, it gives them the information directly to a computer on a screen, so they don't have to be beside the patient. It reduces things like infection rates because we're not using equipment. We don't have to go looking for a blood pressure monitor or a thermometer because we've got it there. So the Buzz Lightyear to infinity and beyond has started in many places around the clinical information. We now need to bring it into the management information. When you get the slides, I can give you a bit of blurb on the other 2, but they're basically just clinical information systems that are gathering information in real time. One of the things that I didn't say, it was on 2 slides back, what we've done in the Office of the CIO is we've developed a business intelligence community. There's 150 people in the community. They get some mail shots every now and then. If you guys want to join, if you go to www.hscbicc.ie, you can put in your email, and you'll get those mail shots. If there's something that we're doing and we want to interact with somebody that's got a statistics background, we're going to find out who you are. We're going to come back looking for you. So I'd like to thank you for the opportunity, and if you have any questions, you can ask me at any time.